Take off that mask. You don't need it.
What do you think you'll see if I do?
The face of my son.
Your son, he's gone.
This is Next Door Villain.
I'm Tiana.
I'm Joe.
In this podcast, we practice empathy by discussing fictional villains.
Because if we can learn to understand characters that were designed to be hated, then we might just have a chance of understanding the real-life villains we encounter every day.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Next Door Villain. I'm Tiana.
And I'm Joe.
And we're here to talk about Kylo Ren from the Star Wars movies, the most recent ones. Anyway, I know there's a lot. But yeah, Joe, do you like Kylo Ren? Because I really like Kylo Ren.
Yeah, I love Kylo Ren as a character, not necessarily as a person, because he does a lot of terrible things. But I'm really excited to talk about him today because I think more than any other villain that we've talked about so far, him as a character kind of reflects what's going on in society and the world today. So I think our conversation will have some real impact on how we think and interact with what's happening in the world, I think.
Yeah, and talking about more occurrences of what's happening in the world. Fun fact is that not only do we think Kylo Ren is kind of a cool character, but someone had the idea to interview Donald Glover about Kylo Ren, or at least ask him what he thought about Kylo Ren. And Donald Glover, aka Childish Gambino, thinks Kylo Ren is cool. Why? I don't really know. But
well, you do know that Donald Glover plays Lando Calrissian in the Han Solo movie.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But
so I think
but he doesn't know Kylo Ren in the Han Solo movie. Does he?
No, that's way before
right.
Chronologically.
Right.
But he's like good friends with Han Solo, who becomes Kylo Ren's father.
Yeah, but even if we don't know the complete reason, Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, is super cool. So if he says that someone is cool, then we should maybe listen to him.
Yeah, right. I think that logic definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Childish Gambino.
Anyways, so some people who are listening might not know that much about Kylo Ren, so it's probably time to jump into the part of our podcast where we compete to see who can give the best 30-second summary of Kylo Ren. I'd like to note that Tiana is the overwhelming winner of the summaries so far, so if there's anyone out there who likes my summaries, please go on and vote. I have gotten 0 votes. Tiana has gotten all of the votes.
Yes. Woohoo. Thank you. My great fan.
As the defending champion, Tiana, I think that you should go first this week.
Oh, okay. All right. Are you timing me?
Yep, I'll count you down. Are you ready?
I hope so.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Dun 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 dun. Galaxy far, far away, there lived a guy named Han Solo who married Princess Leia, who had a son, and all of that other stuff is history because that's the other Star Wars movies, and his name was Ben Solo. But Ben Solo grew up, he was supposed to be a Jedi, and he was like, oh, I don't like that name anymore. He attempted to kill his uncle and became evil. The end. Thank you.
I really enjoyed the atmosphere that you created. You really set the mood.
I tried, even if it was off key.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice.
Oh yeah, now I need to time you. Okay. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, Kylo Ren is a commander in this organization called the First Order, which is trying to take over the galaxy, but he has aspirations to take over the whole organization and be the supreme leader. He also is kind of immature. He often throws temper tantrums when things don't go his way. He aspires to be like his grandfather, who was Darth Vader, and he absolutely obsesses over him. His parents were Han Solo and Princess Leia, and his uncle was Luke Skywalker, and he thought that Luke was going to kill him one night.
He thought he was going to kill him last night, and then the rest is history.
Yeah. So that's Kylo Ren in a nutshell.
Is there anything that we missed that we should cover just in case? You could also watch the movies. What is it? The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens.
But you should probably watch A New Hope and Return of the Jedi and all those films to get the backstory, I think, to fully understand Kylo Ren.
Yep.
But
could even read the books, but that's for people who are way more invested than I am.
Yeah, I mostly just read Wikipedia.
Yeah. Okay, good. I also read Kylo Ren's Twitter account. Did you know he had a Twitter account?
Yes, I did.
Yes. So there's this Twitter account called Emo Kylo Ren at Kylo R3N that brings out the moody person in all of us and makes him very relatable because all of his tweets are about him being emo. One of them being, this is one of them, "Dear Diary, I barely miss my dad. We had nothing in common. I have met a wonderful girl. Either I'm going to kill her or I'm beginning to like her." And that just shows Kylo Ren's weird, moody personality that he has that we're going to go into.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's also, I think, what makes Kylo Ren such a compelling villain is this angstiness, this darkness, and this like sadness that's all inside of him. To me, when I first started thinking about him for this episode, I immediately felt like he was a very sympathetic character. But then when I really started to think about him and his actions, it was really hard for me to find any reason to be sympathetic for him, other than the fact that there was just this general feeling that I had that he was sympathetic.
Right. And so sometimes Kylo Ren, we're like, oh, sometimes we're angsty or sometimes we can get moody. So sometimes Kylo Ren can be relatable in that way. But then again, not relatable in some ways because of some of the horrible things that he's done. Because oftentimes we can be moody, but, you know, we don't act on it. Like we don't burn down a whole Jedi building out of rage.
Yep. Yeah, so that incident you're referring to is, I think, an important part of his genesis story as Kylo Ren. He was born as Ben Solo. His parents were Han Solo and Princess Leia, and when he was young, they sensed that he was a very powerful Force user, and so they sent him away to get trained by his uncle, Luke Skywalker. And while he was in training there, Luke sensed that there was this darkness within him, and Luke was so scared that he considered actually killing Ben. And when Ben found out about that, he got so angry. Totally understandable to be angry when you think someone's trying to kill you. But his rage absolutely takes over him, and he kills all of the other students. He's so upset. And you can't help but draw a parallel between that Kylo Ren as a student and, say, school shootings that have been happening over the past however many years here in the United States. There are a lot of parallels, and it's really pretty terrifying, but it's also, I think, why Kylo Ren is such a great villain for today, because we understand him and we understand that he's sympathetic because he's sad and he's moody and he feels neglected. But he's also terrifying because he's not matured, and he
acts on it. He acts on that rage in very awful ways, and it's not justified. Like he shouldn't have, acted on it in such traumatic ways that have impacted lives and in very devastating ways. So it is hard to sympathize with him.
Yes. And that was a real struggle for me when I was thinking about this, and really kind of made me rethink the roots of this podcast, which the idea was that we could practice empathy by trying to discuss the positive qualities in characters that were created specifically to be bad. And this character was so striking because he has so many parallels with what's going on in the world today. If you compare him to Darth Vader was a perfect villain for the 70s and 80s because he was this powerful, dark, mysterious, cinematic thing that was looming over the galaxy, and everyone was terrified of it, but no one really knew what it was. And it was this perfect parallel for the fears that were happening in the world with the Cold War and whatnot. And Kylo Ren is a very different kind of villain. I read a really great article. Okay. A really great article on themarysue.com called Why Kylo Ren is the Perfect Villain for the Age of the Alt-Right. And I'll just read a quote from the article. Like the alt-righters who marched in Charlottesville wearing those ugly white polos, Kylo is ridiculous, but he's also monstrous. In having him kill Han Solo and out-Snoke, both The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi present Kylo as someone who isn't seduced by the dark side, but actively courting it. And so Kylo turns to the First Order, an ideology that tells him his rage and pain are valid and just reactions to a sick world that needs to be burned clean.
Makes it hard to like Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
When you consider that he represents that.
Yeah. He's idealizing a time in the past which he looks to as a time where his power and his privilege as a Force user could have made him all powerful and could have made him all powerful like Darth Vader was, but now he's in a time where that's not working out so well, where things aren't necessarily great for him anymore. And what he doesn't realize is that the past wasn't so great. And he doesn't know all the complexities of what was happening. And he doesn't even know that his grandfather, Darth Vader, ultimately, in the end, turned back to the good side. Mm-hmm. He just has all this rage built up in him, and he wants an outlet for it, and he wants to find a new place where he can exist and feel like he belongs and that people care about him.
Right, and he's willing to be destructive about it to get what he wants and won't even take no for an answer when he tries to find a way to be more powerful than Snoke or tries to be a powerful person in the galaxy or make his own galaxy order. He's so angry.
Yeah, despite the terrible things that he's done, murder his father and murder all his fellow classmates, and in the beginning of The Force Awakens, he murders an entire village. Mm-hmm. He's obviously terrible and can't control his rage. Despite those bad actions, are there things in his life that we can be sympathetic to? Yeah,
or we can at least understand his motivations for it and for why he does the things that he does. Of course, as a disclaimer, we don't approve of anything that Kylo Ren has done. We're just trying to figure out what has happened in his life to make him do these types of things.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it just comes down to feeling like he doesn't have a place of belonging. His father, Han Solo, really cool guy, but it's hard to imagine that he was an amazing father. He was a smuggler by trade, and just a generally non-reliable guy for most of his life. And we know that his parents split up at an early age, or when he was younger. And his mom is Princess Leia Organa, who was
Commander Leia.
Yeah, an amazing, powerful woman, awesome person. But you can imagine that maybe that meant that she didn't have a lot of time for her son. And so we have two distant parents, and then they send him away to be trained by his uncle to become a Jedi. And I can imagine that having distant parents who then send you away could be really stressful on someone who is clearly very emotional already.
Right. It's here, okay, now you're going to live our legacy now of being a Jedi and learn the ways of what we want you to be and how we want you to act and to become a Jedi. And then his own uncle doesn't seem to trust him. And so, of course that can make you angry, as you stated before. And I think when talking about Kylo Ren's motivations as well, someone might ask us, well, what's the point? If you don't agree with what Kylo Ren has done, what's the point in understanding his motivations and how, of course, when people do devastating things like bringing a gun to like school shooters or doing terrible things, you have to understand why they could have possibly done that to figure out the solution to making sure that things like that don't happen again. So does the Star Wars realm, do those characters are asking themselves, well, how can we stop someone like Darth Vader happen again? How can we stop someone like Kylo Ren to appear again? Or someone like Snoke? Well, you have to figure out what happened to make them become the way that they are in order to stop it in the future. And so I think talking about Kylo Ren and his motivations have that type of value.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at the Star Wars universe, I think that we can definitely criticize the good Jedis. The good people in the universe have a history of failing to support young, powerful Jedis. Anakin Skywalker, who became Darth Vader, it didn't seem like it was that difficult for the dark side, the Sith Lords, to recognize that he was vulnerable and to step in and seduce him to becoming an evil, powerful leader. And the same thing with Kylo Ren. Snoke saw that there was this angst and this darkness within Kylo, and all he had to do was step in and nurture it. And it's weird to me that the other powerful Jedis couldn't see this darkness as well and realize that they needed to step in and offer support and comfort instead of just trying to train them to become powerful Jedis. You know, the people on the bad side can see this angst and use it to their advantage, but the people on the good side seem to see this or just ignore it.
Right. Or maybe they're just so afraid of it from dealing with it for so much of their lives, like in the past, that then they just kind of freak out and freeze, kind of what Luke did, and don't take the necessary steps to nurture them instead. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe one takeaway we can get from the Star Wars stories is that when we see darkness in people and we see power and anger within them, that what they might really need is nurturing and love and care and support. We shouldn't send them away.
On the other hand, too, we can't always just say that it was still justified for Kylo to kill his Jedi classmates or do horrible things because he wasn't nurtured. But it's still, I don't know. I'm trying to say that just because he wasn't nurtured, he still shouldn't have done what he did.
Right.
But,
for sure.
Right. But Luke still had some responsibility in not nurturing him or taking care and taking the necessary steps to help Kylo.
Yeah.
When he saw what was coming.
Yeah. It shouldn't be so easy for dark forces to swoop in and seduce a person. We should be doing our best to make it difficult for them to do that.
I know. It's almost like there should be a system in place. All right. Star Wars universe needs more mental health facilities, just like we do. Or less guns.
Yeah. We need more teachers who have funding and support.
We need more compensation for teachers, too.
Yes, compensation for teachers. We need lightsaber control.
We need, you know what other type of control we need? We need the control where people can't get into each other's heads to speak to each other so easily. When Snoke connects Kylo Ren and Rey together so that they can convince each other to do bad things.
Yeah. So the parallel...
Mind control!
The Force parallel to mind control in the real world is like dark corners of the internet.
Yes. And weird alt-right dudes, Nazi dudes, talking on the internet.
Yeah.
So now that we've kind of talked about the motivation for Kylo Ren and kind of a bit more about his past, we can continue to talk about like the movies themselves and what's happened in them. And because one of the main character of both of those movies that Kylo Ren is in is Rey, who's basically the next, she's the next Luke Skywalker, which is pretty cool. But then Kylo Ren and Rey start to talk to each other a lot, and I'm very interested in the connection that they have with each other in one of the movies, because Rey seems kind of optimistic about Kylo Ren, that maybe because of his past or his actions leading up to her meeting Kylo Ren, she might think that he can come over to the light, or that in order to stop him, she would need to connect with him to not only fight him, but also to try and convince him to come over to the light. And as you know, in the movies, Snoke connects Rey and Kylo Ren in order to talk to one another. I think that was mostly done because Snoke wanted Kylo Ren to convince Rey to come to the dark side, or to at least mess with each other for his benefit. So because they have this kind of connection, at first, of course, when Rey sees Kylo Ren, she sees that Kylo Ren killed his own father, and she sees that he's just a very evil person. She's very angry with him at first. And then when they start talking to each other, they start to kind of get to know each other and their pasts, and they kind of use it against each other to come to one side or the next. And Rey seems to think that this energy could be channeled into being with the light. So sometimes I kept thinking to myself, like, why do they keep convincing each other? And they seem to be kind of similar. Like, they have similar energies, similar drives, but the only difference is that they've made two different choices, and they're just arguing with each other about which one might be better. And Rey tries to convince Kylo to come to her side so that the Resistant wins, and Kylo tries to convince Rey to create a new order with him, to create a completely new order in the galaxy after Kylo Ren kills Snoke. And in some ways, you yourself, you're starting to be convinced that maybe she should go with Kylo Ren to create a new order, because he's very convincing, and you said that yourself.
Well, there was the moment when Kylo killed Supreme Leader Snoke, which was a surprise, when he asked Rey to join him to create something new, where I legitimately thought for a second that Rey was going to join him, which would have been a really cool and interesting plot twist. But ultimately that didn't happen. But I think that's really interesting and shows us a little more in depth into what Kylo is thinking and feeling, is that he just doesn't like the way that things are, and he wants to be a part of something different, a part of something that he can control. And I think that's very interesting, because I'm someone who I have a lot of anxiety, so I like to control what's going on around me. And Kylo may very well have felt that all his life he didn't have control. He was born into a very privileged family. He was born as a naturally powerful Force user, and then probably felt like he had to become a powerful Jedi in order to fulfill his destiny. And rebelling and creating something new that's his was his way of taking control of his life instead of letting his life control him. And that's a feeling I can definitely connect with, though I don't agree with the way that he's doing it. I can definitely understand why he would want to do things his own way rather than the way that the world is telling him that he should.
Right. And even I am almost convinced that, maybe things should go in a new order or in a different way than what's happening right now. And maybe he's actually pretty smart for thinking that things can be different, and maybe it could be better, or at least better than what's happening in the current state, where, the light, there's hardly anyone left because of casualties from fighting Snoke. And the light continues to have all of these battles. They win some, they lose some, and a lot of the Jedis too are like, the light should prevail. And sometimes you think, should it? I mean, you have a lot of loss. I don't know if the way that you're doing things will be sustainable in the future. Maybe it's better to create a new system. I don't know. But whatever it might be, it would have been interesting to see what that would have looked like. And to see if Kylo Ren could have actually been correct that it could be better than just this constant battling of each other throughout the galaxies forever and ever.
Yeah, and that's another place where I think you can draw parallels with what's going on in the real world, particularly with the election of Donald Trump and the popularity of Bernie Sanders in the last election. Just this desire by people who don't fit into the far left or the far right to find something new and to try out something new and something different. I don't think we risk losing many of our listeners by saying anything bad about Donald Trump. But, I think that a lot of what got Donald Trump elected was a desire just to try something different from people who didn't feel like they fit in on either end of the spectrum. And I think that examining Kylo Ren as a character is a way that we can kind of learn to understand those people. And that even though I personally agree with that perspective, and I think that ultimately it's had some pretty bad consequences in the United States politically, it helps me to understand those people a little bit better, that they want something that's completely different because they don't feel like they fit in with anything else around them.
And then maybe that's also justification to get rid of like a two-party system too, right? You have the Republicans and Democrats, but I mean, people who have been calling for, more prevalence in other parties are those who are like, well, we could, try and figure out if both of these things aren't working, and the country's going in the same way that it's always been, no matter what. If there's a Democrat in office or a Republican in office, then maybe having a completely different party might be better, or at least we can see or check it out, pilot it.
Yeah. Well, before we turn into a political organization here.
Yeah. Well, Star Wars is really political,
Yeah.
It just always has been.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a good time for us to shut up and hear a perspective from someone else in the next part of our podcast.
Yeah, for the sake of time, we are going to stop right here, but we do have a lot more to talk about with Kylo Ren, so please stay tuned because in the future we will do a Kylo Ren Part 2. Now on to the next portion of our podcast, which is to showcase the literary piece that was submitted for this episode. If you would like to submit your own literary piece for a future episode that showcases the villain's humanity and who they are, you can feel free to submit either a poem or a monologue or a short story, a song, basically any literary piece that can really encapture the villain, and it's your artistic discretion on how you want to do that. So if you want to know more information about that, you can go to nextdoorvillain.com and submit your own literary piece and also see our recommendation for the villains that we plan on talking about in the future. For this episode of Kylo Ren, we do have a very special submission. We have a poem by Nicholas Rogers, aka King Boomy. So thank you, Nicholas, for submitting this, and enjoy.
In a world of definitions, the ones conflicted face pain and anguish, baptized into violence, good versus evil pre-established, predetermined by the Force. This is noble, that is savage. A galaxy at war, a family out of balance. Caught between destiny and desire, changes come as relief. The heart wants what it wants, what's right for you is not right for me. Vilified for my nature, no one alive understands me, finding solace in the darkness like my father's father before me. Rebuked for my hatred by those who can't see. You have to sacrifice for greatness. My hatred motivates me. You say you do for love, but you won't do everything. If you really knew love, there's no hesitating. I am all I am. No past, no family. Kill it if you have to. Your choice. No prophecy. Once again, that was a poem about Kylo Ren, written by Nicholas Rogers, aka King Boomy. If you have your own thoughts about Kylo Ren, we would love to hear them. You can send us an email at nextdoorvillain@gmail.com, or you can also call and leave us a voicemail at 567-343-3359. We may even play your message on a future episode. As always, this episode was produced by us, Joe Anderson and Christiana Hennings. Our logo and the artwork on our website was all done by Eric Kanichke. Thanks again to Nicholas Rogers for his poem this week, and if you like what you hear, or even if you don't, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or in the Google Play Store, and we hope you subscribe. Thanks.